Welcome to the regular scheduled meeting from the Rossmore Community Services District. Tonight is April 10, 2012. Mr. Chairman, we have a roll call at this time.
Director Casey?
Here.
Director Rips?
Here.
Director Kaler is not here at this time. President Coletta?
Here.
And Director Maynard has an excused absence
Yes,
tonight.
as I understand he does. All right, if you would join us, please, for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Taboada, do you want to address the presentation noted for this evening?
Yes, sir. Mr. President, members of the board, as you may know, I attend weekly briefings of the Orange County Transit Authority and Caltrans briefings on the West Coast Connector project, which, as you know, is underway, particularly at the 7th Street off-ramp and at Valley View. And work is about to commence in mid-July on the 405 overpass. As part of those briefings, we get up-to-date information on what are the impacts of the various project components and its effect on traffic. Approximately 6 weeks ago, we learned that two aspects of the West Side project, which is the western portion of the connector project, that at the same time that the 405 Seal Beach overpass is restricted to one lane in each direction, that there would be a 12-day closure of the tunnel which connects the southbound 605 to the southbound I-405, meaning that 30,000 cars per day during that 12-hour period, or that 12-day period, would then have to use surface streets to connect back to the I-405 using more than likely streets north of Coletta and south of Westminster to gain access back to the freeway. Well, the district, represented by myself and the RHA, both voiced concerns, and as did the city of Los Alamitos, about how we would be able to handle those two impacts simultaneously. So then I had a meeting with representatives of Caltrans and OCTA and expressed that this was really an unacceptable situation because we already have severe traffic issues just resulting from the construction that's going on today. They asked if they could get a 30-day extension to come to the board to brief the board and the community about what, if any, mitigation had been brought about to alleviate those two impact issues. At last Monday's meeting, I was told that they still had not come to any conclusion as to how they would deal with this situation, and instead they sent me an email, which I'd like to read into the record. OCTA and Caltrans District 12 are reviewing various proposals to eliminate working on the 12-day southbound 605 to southbound 405 full connector closure concurrently with the lane reduction on Seal Beach Boulevard during the first phase of bridge reconstruction. Several proposals have been developed by field personnel with input from the project's contractor, and the information is being reviewed by management at both agencies for further direction. In order to perform a thorough analysis, OCTA and Caltrans will require additional time and will not be ready to make a presentation on April 10, 2012 to the Rossmore Board. Our team will keep you posted at the weekly traffic meetings to update you on the status of our review. Please be assured we are working on all options to eliminate the work proceeding concurrently and will provide you with as much advance notification to address your stakeholders. And it's signed Bill Gilchrist, resident engineer for Caltrans for the West End project. So hopefully by the board's May meeting, we'll have at least the best information available to it, to alert the public as to what will or will not happen with regard to these two issues.
Between today and the next board meeting in May for the RCSD.
That's correct, sir.
Do you anticipate there'll be additional stakeholder meetings that you may attend?
Well, I attend their weekly briefing, so I do get, and I include that information in your weekly updates, but typically I don't report it out at the board meetings. But
Well, I asked because I didn't think the community was aware of that level of detail of your participation on a weekly basis.
there will be a presentation by OCTA at the next RHA board meeting, which I believe is next Tuesday, I believe. And so they will get even more updated information than I may have today. But I doubt that they're going to arrive at a solution very quickly because it is a complex issue. And there may not be any way to mitigate that other than through extensive traffic alerts and detour information. But it's just going to be a real nightmare if the two happen at the same time.
Competing concern, I'm sure, for many people is the access to this community for emergency personnel. With a single lane closure on Seal Beach Boulevard,
Well, it is anticipated that there will, and it's planned to have a third lane, which is for public safety vehicles only. So that's one step that they've taken care of. But again, you have to be able to get onto the bridge. You have to be able to get onto the bridge and able to utilize that third lane. So it's problematic.
thank you, Mr. Taboada.
I believe there's also a meeting that's in this very room. I received an invitation, but I don't recall what date that's scheduled for. Are you aware of that,
It's the
Henry?
stakeholders meeting, the quarterly stakeholders meeting where they discuss
Right.
everything that's current with the project.
Correct.
We'll put a notice out on our website if
Thank
we
you.
already haven't.
Excellent.
Okay. Mr. Kalit's now with us. It's only been 7 minutes since we've commenced the meeting. Glad you can make it.
Thank you.
Okay, now we go to the public forum. This is the time where people in the community wish to address the board on matters that are obviously properly jurisdictional matters we have oversight over. We'll be pleased to listen to you. State your first and last name, and you have roughly 3 minutes to address whatever concern you may have concerning matters in our community. But if there's matters that require action, of course, then we would defer it to staff and/or calendar it for the next appropriate board meeting for the RCSD. So if anyone would like to come up, please do come up.
Hi there, I'm Georgia Lynn Seligman. I'm representing the Rossmoor Homeowners Association and kind of the Rossmoor Community Services District. We are having our big event this coming May the 6th, the first Sunday in May. Always remember, you'll always be in Rush Park the first Sunday in May every year, because that's when we hold our event. Here is a flyer for the camera to see. And this will be going in all store windows throughout Seal Beach and Los Alamitos by me personally. And now that we're over the holidays, we want you all to come and celebrate our Spring Community Festival. It's well known for having terrific attendance. This year is no exception. Our wonderful Master of Ceremonies, Mike Carpentier, will be with us again. We Care of Los Alamitos will start the day with their first annual high heel dash race. Now, I've had men say, "You want us to wear what?" Well, anyway, they're just going to run around the park a few times, and they're hoping that this will attract a lot of people. I won't be running. I don't do high heels. Some of our events will be, again, the Fabulous Dog Show by Eric Christensen, plus our great car show. And we have at least 60 cars, better than ever. We will also have the Democratic and the Republican women's clubs to sign up folks to register to vote in November 2012 election. This is a very important election. And I tell you, it was an effort to get both groups together. But I managed to get a yes on that. And yes, the train ride is coming back, and the pony ride will be back again. We will have at least 50, I'm working on close to 60, regular vendors. The Los Alamitos Youth Center will be there to register your children for their terrific summer day camp. And it is terrific because I've worked that day camp with them, and it's great. The famous catering group, Knights of the Holy Grill, will serve us wonderful food. And we'll have delicious desserts by AJ Concessions and Dippin' Dots ice cream. We'll also have 7 wonderful groups to entertain us throughout the day. Rossmoor Homeowners Association, Rossmoor Community Service District, Rossmoor Predator Management Team will also have booths. Any questions? They will be answered. Community volunteers are much needed. Please offer your services to help make this a great festival. And you can contact me, Georgia Lynn Seligman. My phone number is 562-598-6360. And again, here's our wonderful flyer for everybody to see. And there are also extra copies on the table for anyone to take home. Thank you so much for letting me speak.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Ms. Seligman.
Good evening, board members. My name is Chad Stewart, Rossmoor resident, and wanted to introduce myself as the new elected Los Alamitos Girls Softball League Neighborhood Liaison Officer. I just wanted to introduce myself tonight and let you know I'll be coming to your monthly meetings and fielding any comments, questions, or concerns from the community regarding LAGSL operations at both Rossmoor Park and Rush Park. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, seeing no one else coming forward, we'll proceed to reports to the board. Mr. Taboada, would you please address D1?
Mr. President, members of the board, this is a report on governance as we report to you each month on our progress with initiatives which have been initiated by the board with regard to our future governance. At your special meeting on March 27th, you took up the matter of the public records request to the county for financial data. That data, which has been requested, as you know, numerous times of the Second District Supervisor and not forthcoming. Since that meeting, Mr. Fred Brousseau of the Harvey Rose Company has conferred via telephone with officials of the Orange County to discuss the district's Public Records Act request, which is attached as part of your agenda package as item number 1. No, excuse me, I think that we gave that to you previously. I participated in that conversation, and we were basically told that the county did not possess the data which we were requesting. We gave them reasons why we thought that data was important and necessary to the district in furtherance of our district's future application for latent powers. They stated that they would close out the PRA without submitting the requested data because it was not readily available, and it's not required that they create data in order to satisfy the Public Records Act request. But they did state that they understood our need for the data and that they would basically attempt to extrapolate data from their gross numbers and provide Rossmore with, or the district, for the cost of services to the community of Rossmore. That discussion was memorialized by Mr. Fred Brousseau, and it's attachment 1 to your agenda item. Attachment number 2 is a response from the manager of the CEO Community Relations Office of the County of Orange, and basically saying they've received the information and they acknowledge that they had agreed to assist us with attempting to obtain information. But they gave us no specifics as to when we might receive it. In fact, a telephone conversation between Mr. Brousseau and the county indicated that they were in the process of developing their annual budget, and it might be some time before it would be possible for them to start looking at that data for us. Attachment 3 of your agenda item is a letter from Mr. Fred Brousseau of the Harvey Rose Company back to the CEO's office, asking them to please give us a timeline for when that data might be forthcoming, and establishing a deadline of April 20th as a time for at least for the district to receive a timeline as to when we might get such data. It's anticipated that because of what we've been told, that we probably won't get a timeline that'll be satisfactory for our needs. You have previously had conversations and have engaged the services of the Kaufman law firm to look into what other remedies might be available to the district. And subsequent to the April 20th deadline, I will advise you as to what, if anything, we've received from the county. And if we have not received anything, or if what we receive is not responsive to our needs, then I would recommend that the board consider a closed session with your special counsel to at least explore your legal remedies available to the district for obtaining that data. Mr. President, members of the board, that's my report.
Okay. Any comments, anyone?
I find it very challenging that we cannot get the information that we're looking for. It's disturbing, but keep us posted.
Well, it's particularly frustrating because they have previously provided some data to LAFCO for the 2 reports that LAFCO produced, which was the comprehensive financial analysis during the incorporation process, and the case study that we received a year or so ago that basically compared the cost of Rossmore services with Seal Beach and Los Alamitos, and that data had to come from somewhere. And yet the budget manager for the county says he's never heard of those 2 reports, and he's never seen the data that was produced. And so he's basically starting from scratch to try and at least give us some idea of when we might see something forthcoming from them. But I'm not very optimistic.
Do we know how recent Frank Kim's appointment to the position of budget manager has been?
He's been there for some time, but he may not have been directly involved with that process, but certainly someone in his department would have been.
I just can't believe they can't tell you what your property taxes are doing. Right? Your property taxes do this. This is what you get for your money. Just how do you run a business like that?
Well, if you've done this previously, you'd think there'd be a template out there somewhere that would say you can do it the same way, that you just don't archive or throw that away so that nobody has access to the technique.
Well,
That's just very surprising.
it is. And if you consider that when they provided the data for the CFA, for incorporation,
Yeah.
they had to go through some process to obtain that data. What we didn't get with the CFA, though, was any methodology. There was no way for us to go back and analyze their methodology for how they arrived at those numbers. Had they provided that methodology, we might not be having this discussion. Because without the methodology, all they are just published numbers with no background.
Right, one more frustration.
Well, I think it's fairly obvious that the numbers are just pulled from thin air. There is no backing, and we've now peeled back the onion and we scratched on the surface, and we've come to the realization that it's just a bunch of malarkey. It's all made up, and this is the way that it works at the county.
Well, particularly when
That's fairly obvious.
when Mr. Brousseau, who has a wealth of experience working with local governments and counties throughout the state, who has told us that counties can produce such data. It's not an uncommon situation. And so, for some reason, Orange County doesn't seem to have that same capability, but we'll get to the bottom of it eventually, I suppose.
We hope.
All right, thank you, sir.
It's all interesting.
You ready to proceed to D2?
Very good. Mr. President, members of the board, we have a rather sticky situation that has arisen with regard to the district's authority and responsibility for the planting, trimming, and removal of trees. The board has adopted its policy and reaffirmed its policy on many occasions, stating that it is the district's responsibility for the removal of a tree. Your board package has included in it the Measure H, which was adopted by the electorate of the community of Rossmore to take responsibility for the maintenance of the urban forest. It also has the county's procedures, which specifically point out that it is Rossmore that has that responsibility for the maintenance of trees. And it also references a letter from Director Ochoa of Orange County Public Works. Basically states that there's a resolution on file by the County Board of Supervisors, which basically institutionalizes the role and responsibility of tree maintenance to the community or to the district on behalf of the community of Rossmore. Several weeks ago, we received a request from a resident who wanted us to remove a healthy tree. Your tree consultant, Mr. Reynolds, went out and inspected the tree and found it to be in good condition and that there was no basis for the removal. We had then heard from the county, from the OC Public Works maintenance staff, who said that for safety reasons, the tree was going to be removed. And I basically told that supervisor that they had no authority to remove that tree without our consent. Mr. Reynolds and I then went out and looked at the tree, and we discovered, we basically viewed the fact that the tree was a healthy tree, that it posed no safety hazards that we could see. And I then proceeded to work my way up the chain of command at the Public Works Department to see who had initiated that order to have it removed. Finally, was able to communicate with Mr. Ignacio Ochoa, who was then the chief engineer for Public Works and is now the acting director of Public Works, and inquired as to why this tree was scheduled to be removed by the county and why was it that the county was making this decision. He advised me again that they had determined that it posed a safety hazard. I asked for what hazard that was, and he could not give me the answer. So we agreed then that since their arborist, and they have an arborist on staff, had determined that the tree posed a safety hazard, that if his arborist and our arborist would come together and basically review the situation as professionals and come up with perhaps some consensus on the state of the tree. That was a phone call that I received from Mr. Ochoa. I don't recall exactly the date, but it was during the day. And I said, that's great. Let's get the two experts together and let's see what they come up with. The very next day, after work hours, around 5:30, I received a call from Mr. Ochoa saying, well, we've decided the tree's going down. So when I got a hold of Mr. Reynolds, he was on his way to the next morning to see what was going on with the removal of the tree. And by the time he got there, a little after 7 o'clock, the tree was down. He then,
7 a.m.?
huh?
7 a.m.
Yeah, 7 a.m. And so Mr. Reynolds then inspected what was left of the tree and determined that the trunk and its branches that he could clearly see that were laying on the side of the parkway, that it was a healthy tree, and that he could not determine any reason for the removal other than the resident had requested it, and someone at Orange County, and I'll leave it to your discretion as to who you think that might be, had basically told staff to remove the tree. I then contacted our general counsel and I said, look, this is really a serious situation. It's not a question of one tree. I mean, we remove
Not at all.
trees. We remove trees for a variety of reasons. But in this case, someone above the district had determined that it was their decision to remove a tree. And if that's precedent setting in my mind. And once the county figures that they have the final word, then anyone who wants a tree removed can basically call the county and say, I want this tree out. And our urban forest then is jeopardized by the precedent, not by the removal of that one tree. I've ordered removal of trees, as I say, for a variety of good reasons. But in this case, they could not demonstrate to us that there was any real a good reason for doing so, other than I was told by several members of the Orange County Public Works Department that we've been ordered to remove it.
So neither Mr. Ochoa nor any of his associates have come up with a safety reason for why that was done?
I have yet to hear it, yes, sir.
Okay, thanks.
Now, General Counsel has contacted the county council representative who deals with public works, and they are going to try and see if they can come to some reasonable explanation about whose responsibility trumps whose. And our opinion, mine and county council, our general counsel, is that the district has the stated responsibility as enacted by the voters of Rossmore and by Public Works' own directives and by the Board of Supervisors' own resolution, that it is a matter for the district to decide when a tree is removed or not. If our general counsel is not able to obtain either an explanation or an agreement about the respective responsibilities of the district and the county, then the board may have to again meet in closed session with general counsel and see what your legal remedies are. That's as much
Sounds
as,
like that's where it's going.
well, it's a shame, is what it is.
Oh, most definitely. We're at war with the county.
I note item 1, the bottom contains copies of the February 25, 2011 letter to yourself being distributed to a number of people, of which one was Jess Carbajal, the then director of Planning and Development, having oversight of Public Works.
Correct.
Has Mr. Carbajal been terminated?
He's been placed on administrative leave, is what I'm told.
Do you have any belief that it has something to do with this, or did his termination or administrative leave precede the decision to remove the tree?
I didn't quite understand.
Did Mr. Carbajal's termination or leave of absence precede the tree being removed?
It happened right during it, because when I first talked with Mr. Ochoa, he was still the chief engineer and assistant director the last time I talked to him, which was a matter of days. That he was then the acting director. So I can't say that this particular issue had anything to do with what's going on with him, but I never got a chance to speak with him because he was no longer there.
I'd just
That
like to
would have
make
been
a-
my next point of contact.
Just a point of reference on page 2 of this, what is it, agenda item D2. You said in attachments, it says number 1, it says letter dated February 25, 2012. Probably want to change that to 2011,
Oh, thank you.
just a
Yeah,
point of reference.
will do.
I do appreciate the attachments that have been submitted tonight for everyone's historical perspective of the evolution from a ballot measure in 1988 to the correspondence that, to me, it's clear and convincing the Rossmore Community Services District has exclusive jurisdiction in this area. By my recollection of the privilege that I've had to serve here with my colleagues and predecessors, whenever there was a challenge to the manager's decision, whether it was Mr. Taboada, former managers of the district, an appeal by the resident was permissive to be brought to the board. We hired comparable appeals 2 months ago. And that, to me, was a review process where 5 people could weigh in and decide if whether the manager was correct or incorrect. It's beyond me where there's a footnote or any reference of any of the materials submitted tonight as historical information that says the County of Orange trumps the appellate process that's built in by the district to its policies for the residents. Just aghast.
I really don't know where this is amazing that they would take this approach. I mean, this was a direct, this was well thought out. This was not just a spur-of-the-moment decision. Somebody really saw this and said, we're going to go ahead and do this, and I'm real curious to what our council advises us to do next, because I agree with you, Mr. Taboada. This is very precedent-setting on, I believe, on a number of fronts.
General Counsel is very interested in your comments tonight because that will, he wants to be certain that this board is committed to taking this thing as far as it need be to obtain resolution. And if that is your position, then I will communicate that to him.
Oh, just personally, personally, I think we have to really think about this deeply, because I think this sets a precedent not just about trees, but about anything about the overall, I think the overall power and responsibility and authority of the district and the relationship between the district and the county. I think any other case can be pointed back to this one at some extent. I'm not an attorney. I mean, perhaps some other colleagues can comment on that, but I'd like to make a motion that we recommend to our council that they explore this to the fullest extent.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion?
Well, I just agree that it's totally egregious, and, we definitely have to take a stand on this without a doubt.
All right, I call for the question. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the motion carries. You have your direction, Mr. Taboada, to ask District Council to join us next month or on a telecon format, if that's the way it should occur, to apprise us, advise us of what progress is made and what our remedies could be.
Very good.
Mr. Annisman, you would like to say something?
As all you have expressed, it's very disturbing that the county would preempt the district's responsibility with respect to trees and tree removal. One of the questions, I don't know that you covered, Mr. Taboada, was why the resident asked for this tree to be removed. And that's question number one. And question number two, which you have tried to get the answer, is what was the safety issue that the county acted on? I think we need to, the district needs to get an answer to that.
I agree.
Do you have an answer for the first one I asked?
From what I know, the tree has, sometimes when trees are planted, they have a tendency for the trunk to develop sort of what I would call a half-dome ball around the base of the tree. And that was the only thing that we saw that was different than what one would characterize as a normal tree. The parkway was littered with bricks, which were not in place, just laying in the parkway, which, if you recall from our conversations with the county about parkways being paved over, bricked over, et cetera, we determined that there were over 700 residences in the community of Rossmore that had bricks and pavers and rocks and other stuff in the parkways that had been placed there without a permit. And the county said, well, we can't go back and deal with those, so that's history. And so they kind of closed their eyes to the fact that if there really is safety hazards, those might be the ones that need to be looked at. If we were to assume that one tree and its condition, if you would call it, with that structure around the base of it, if that in fact was considered to be a safety hazard, then there's several hundred, maybe 1,000 trees in the community that have the same condition.
Was it uplifting the bricks?
Well, the bricks were scattered, like I say, up and down the parkway. So they weren't placed in any order, or they were not. The tree apparently, it seemed like it had no effect whatsoever on.
That shouldn't have been an issue.
Nonetheless, it's troubling that if that is what the county thought of as a safety hazard, then our urban forest is in real jeopardy, because there's lots of trees that grow this way. It's a normal condition, not specifically normal, but it doesn't pose any safety hazard from our point of view.
Thank you.
I just had a question about the conversation that was supposed to be had between the county's arborist and ours. And I just wanted to know if you thought that they called off that meeting hastily. Did that have anything to do with Mr. Reynolds' certifications or lack of certifications?
Oh, no. We have on contract WCA who have certified arborists, so we would have no problem whatsoever putting two certified arborists together to evaluate the situation. But within a matter of less than 24 hours, everything changed and the tree was down.
So I understand that we could have brought somebody in. I guess I'm wondering
We have the resources to do
if
that.
the county chose to say, well, an arborist didn't look at it. Our arborist looked at it and said, hey, it is healthy. This guy who's not an arborist did look at it and said it was healthy. It really means nothing. And if we, I guess, earlier on in the process should have brought somebody into the loop that was an arborist.
Well, circumstantially, Mr. Rips, you could say they didn't want to hear about it. So you preempt the meeting, and you can't fully, they would challenge the assessment after the fact because it's in pieces.
It foreclosed our opportunity to take it to the CEO or to the supervisor's office and ask the question. I mean, it just foreclosed our options. The tree's down.
Curiosity for me remains, what are the damages in some respect? The tree is a community tree. It's on a public parkway. It's a benefit to the entirety of the street, on both sides of the street. I'm going to presume it's a mature tree. It's not something that's been planted in the last 5 years.
That's a mature tree.
I'd be curious to know what West Coast arborists would have said the fair market value of a mature, healthy tree of that species would be. If one had to be trucked in on a large truck, in one of these massive boxes, not a 36-inch box, but I wonder what the value would be. I think that's part of the consideration of what should be considered and discussing when they do things like this. There's the price to pay. And if we're going to not go along with pursuing it, but we should know with our eyes full open what we're walking away from. Because there are plenty of healthy trees that are 20 years old, 30 years old, that are very healthy, and there's even older. You can't replace them.
Well, mature trees, if you place a value on them, and run tens of thousands of dollars. The problem you have is that in a parkway, the maximum size tree you can plant in there is a 36-inch box, which is only several $100s.
Well, that doesn't mean necessarily that if there was a remedy and if the tree was $20,000 replacement, but because we couldn't install it, that I'm jeopardized from collecting $20,000. That's my issue. I should be restored, and how I attempt to make myself whole with the monies acquired is my burden, because I have to comply with restrictions. But they had no right to remove a healthy tree who obviously has been allowed to grow there for so many years unless they can show a compelling reason. Now, their compelling reason is just because. I haven't heard a reason. They just said it was structurally defective. Well, obviously we're earnest in wanting to know why it was structurally defective or diseased. I'll be patient and I'll wait, but I think nonetheless, I think the remedy is not just to get them to give us a 36-inch box tree or 24-inch box tree, but the full cost of replacing that tree had we that opportunity. That's what's fair.
Agree?
We look forward to the next report.
Very good, sir.
Yes.
Now we go to the consent calendar. Should any board member wish to remove items 1, 2, or 3, excuse me, 1 or 2, all separate to number 1.
Nope.
We can do so, no? Yes?
Good.
Mr. Casey?
I do not want to remove anything.
All right. All in favor of the consent calendar items 1 and 2, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay,
Was there a motion for that?
Yes, made.
Second.
Good.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? None opposed, okay. I apologize for a shortcoming in the process. Now we jump to regular calendar.
Mr. President, members of the board, item H1 is a review of a draft employment agreement / general manager. During your consulting general manager's evaluation during a closed session at your April board meeting, you dealt with the issue of succession for your general manager. And previously, you had restructured the employment agreement with the professional services agreement with HT Group to account for how the district would proceed with its succession planning. And it now seems that no matter how much notice one gives ahead of time, that it is difficult to bring somebody on board and hit the floor running without some sort of transition period for that to occur. The board asked me to work with general counsel to structure a succession plan that would include the hiring of a general manager, a part-time general manager on an employee services agreement, which would make that person an employee and not a consultant. And so what I have before you is the basic agreement for you to look at and review and give me direction as to how you want to proceed with this agreement as to serve as a basis for recruiting a part-time manager. That process, of course, needs to be vetted by the Budget Committee, and a meeting has been scheduled, not just for that purpose, but for purposes of developing your preliminary budget for next fiscal year. And that Budget Committee will look at a proposed salary and benefits numbers for the hiring of a part-time general manager, and give me and the board a recommendation on how to proceed with that transition. I envision, and I think that I got clear direction from the board, that once the budget was adopted in June or July of this coming year, that you would authorize me then to begin the recruitment process for that part-time general manager and bring that individual on board, and that I would then, as HT Group, would then serve as a consultant to the board and basically provide for the orderly transition over time with bringing that individual on a full-time basis after my services were concluded. So the agreement before you really is just your first exposure to what is different from a professional services agreement to an employment services agreement. And with your approval, I will bring this matter up then before the Budget Committee to review the document for dollars and cents.
So is this a first reading of this employment agreement, or are we approving the employment agreement the way it stands, or what is the
Oh,
what is the process?
you can't approve this agreement. It's just simply,
Just a reading?
it's there for your information and for direction to me to go the next step, which is to plug in some numbers for the budget budget committee to review, and then for the board to deal with it as part of the budget process with dollars and cents figures included in the document, and a review of any other language issues that you have that you can bring forth at either at the committee or at the board level in the near future.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
What this allows me to do is to start the job description for purposes of recruitment and to begin that process.
Okay. So we're looking forward.
So are you looking for a motion right now to give you direction, or just
A motion, I think, would be appropriate to submit this to the Budget Committee for their review for inclusion of costs associated with this agreement.
I move that we pass this agreement to the Budget Committee to try to work out the details of the salary arrangements based on what we have in our current budget.
And once you adopt the budget, then before I would do anything else, I would bring back to you the agreement for approval after you've had a chance to provide feedback to me or to the committee on things that you'd like to see included or not included in this agreement.
was that motion enough?
Yes.
I second.
Any comments?
No, I'm good.
That's good.
Okay. All right, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? None opposed? All right, do you have your motion, Mr. Taboada?
Thank you for putting this together.
Yeah, this is good.
Yeah, this is good stuff.
H2, please.
All right, sir, we're moving on to item H2. As you may know, that Mr. Charlie Wilson serves as one of two special district representatives on LAFCO, and his term of office expires in June of this year, June 30th to be exact. LAFCO will conduct an election through the independent special districts of Orange County and utilizing the services of the OCOG, the Orange County Council of Governments, to conduct an election to fill that seat. Mr. Wilson has stated that he plans to run for another term. And as you know, he's been before your board several times to bring matters of LAFCO to your attention. Director Casey is your representative on ISDOC, and it is required that in order for him to vote on the election process, once the list of candidates has been formulated, they need a formal direction or formal authorization for Mr. Casey to vote on your behalf. So what I'd like to do is have you authorize Director Casey for that purpose, and I'll fill out the appropriate forms and submit them to LAFCO. And once the nominations are finalized, and if there's more than one candidate, then I'll bring that back to you for decision on giving direction as to who to cast a vote for on behalf of the district.
I believe that election will be the last Thursday in June, if I'm not
I
mistaken.
think you're correct, sir.
Okay.
June 30th.
All right, I would move to authorize Mr. Casey to cast your vote. at the Special District Selection Committee.
Second.
Did I frame that properly, Mr. Casey?
It sounds good to me. I understand what you said.
All right, unless there's any further comment, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Congratulations, Mr. Casey.
Thank you.
All right, general manager items,
I have none, sir.
board member items.
Whoa. No.
Although, Mr. Taboada, I know you're, this is my only item. Although I personally don't want to see the day when you're not going to be part of our team here, I appreciate your professionalism, and we've talked about the transition that needs to come at some point. And I really appreciate your professionalism in starting that process. I do hope it's a lengthy process, but I appreciate what you're doing for our community, and I think it speaks volumes about your integrity and who you are and how you're going to guide us through this. So I just wanted to say thank you publicly for what you're doing.
Thank you, sir.
That's all I got.
I would echo the same. The fact that you're willing to stay to train, that says a lot. You a person of character and conviction and follow through. It's appreciated.
Thank you, sir.
I do have one board item. I believe I read recently potentially the costs for the 4th of July fireworks has increased as far as a contribution requested from us. Is that correct?
Well, I've informed you through your weekly update that we're in the process of developing our preliminary budget, and our expenses have gone up and our revenue's gone down slightly. Not enough to create a serious problem, but at least it requires me to evaluate discretionary spending before we develop a preliminary budget. One of the discretionary items that's been in the budget since I've been here, for the last 6 years, has been a monetary contribution from the district to the cities of Los Alamitos and Cypress, and to some extent Seal Beach, who participates to some degree, to fund the fireworks show for the 4th of July at the JFT training base. It used to be that each individual organization contributed what they could, in either dollars or in services, to make for the show to go on and be successful. A year or so ago, it became evident that the cost of putting this on was becoming a financial burden to the city of Los Alamitos. And so they were fortunate that they received a donation from a very generous individual who subsidized the costs that were being incurred by the city of Los Alamitos. So what happened was that Los Alamitos broke even, and it cost them very little, if anything, to be a participant in this. Yet the district pays, I think it's $6,200, and we get nothing back from that other than we get our name as a sponsor of the event, and that's been a very, I think, worthwhile effort as long as there was monies available for, like I say, for discretionary spending. So I've asked our recreation superintendent, Emily Gingras, to inform Los Alamitos that I am contemplating a recommendation to the board with whether or not to include that amount for next year's spending, so that they have adequate notice that we may be withdrawing from our financial contribution. That, of course, would mean that we would also lose our name as a sponsor of the event.
Oh, yeah.
Ms. Gingras tells me that from her experience as a staffer to that event, that there are very few Rossmore residents that actually participate in that event. Even though it's 25,000 people may show up, they come from all over. And there's so many different venues available here locally for fireworks shows that we may not be getting a large participation from the community. And even if we don't aren't a sponsor, Rossmore residents can still go to the event and enjoy that particular fireworks show. So I just wanted to advise you that I was contemplating that, along with other discretionary spending things that don't have an impact on somebody else, like the city of Los Alamitos and Cypress. So,
From my recollection, the contribution from the Rossmore Community Services Districts 10 years ago approximately was $2,500 per year toward that worthy cause. And I've watched it increase each year on our budget. And as I was surprised to have my memory refreshed that it was more recently $6,200. And so you can see the cost of the increase of providing that, I'm assuming directly to the fireworks and not the other overhead. It's still a dramatic increase because I believe in equitably, it's probably a pro rata share that's being increased by all stakeholders for that event. But you touched upon a very important suggestion, or one of the options, and that is to suggest, separate and apart from pulling away completely, if they're willing to accept a much lesser amount. And if that's not feasible, then of course the other option is to just consider and reflect and discuss whether we would walk away from supporting it, given there are a number of things pulling on us, and the state has done what it has done, and will do again for this fiscal year coming up. So it might be prudent for us to consider where we can cut. But I would appreciate, as soon as the Budget Committee can explore that in other areas, giving us some feedback as to why one of those two options is preferable, and how that betters this district if we do walk away from that event, given the fact that they're not going to close the gate to Rossmore residents.
Mr. Taboada, are you looking for direction from the board tonight on a yea or nay
no,
basis?
it's not on your agenda.
It's just a point of information?
Just information that I've provided to you. I've taken the preliminary step of at least giving a heads up to Los Al so they're not blindsided by it should the
Right.
board elect not to participate. If you do elect to participate, they'll be happy to take our money. So,
Yeah.
I
So
think we
when,
should submit a bill for what they owe us from last year. And use that as our fee for this year.
I think we have a lot of options that we need to discuss about many donations that the board makes. And this definitely falls in that discussion task list.
Yeah, I appreciate that that was pointed out, because I should have been aware, but I didn't know that it accelerated that much from 2,500 to 6,400 in that short a period of time, and it seems unacceptable.
Something that-
Anyway, that's just my board member item. That's something that the Budget Committee would explore.
Exactly.
Mr. Kaler or Casey?
I have one item. I believe that probably most of our community is aware by now of the council meeting at Seal Beach last evening, where among other items on their agenda, they vetted the 7 sites that they had on their list to be potentially supplied to the state for potential construction of low-income housing. And if you don't already know, I'm happy to report that 3 of the 7 sites were removed from consideration, and the first one removed were the shops at Rossmore property. So I consider it a victory for our whole community that has happened. And I might add, if only the county could be as cooperative and work in a collaboration with us instead of the disjointed relationship we had, we'd be so much better off.
Mr. Casey, I had a conversation today with Mr. Sean Crumby, who's the Director of Public Works, Assistant City Manager for the City of Seal Beach. And I just asked him if this was the end of it. And he said, we want to be good neighbors. This is not coming back. So
Awesome.
Yeah, that's better yet.
Fingers crossed.
Mr. Casey, thank you for your
he was quoted liberally in the news today.
your advocacy.
Well, she didn't quote everything, but what she did quote was accurate.
All right.
So I appreciate that.
Thank you for being willing to go to the meetings, Mr. Casey and Mr. Maynard. We appreciate your
Indeed.
support.
Yeah, well, thank you, and I didn't mind doing it. It was quite an education
And to
in
the
terms of the
community-
mechanics of everything, so.
And to the community that's not here tonight that participated in your ad hoc, I'm sure you and Mr. Maynard are very grateful to.
Indeed, yeah, we want to thank the whole team because indeed, it was a team effort, and not just us, but also other stakeholders that were involved in the decision. So sometimes things work out for the best.
Mr. President, members of the board, one last comment on this, and that is that the room was basically filled. I think they have an 80-seat city council chamber.
Something like that. Yeah, there are a few open seats, but not a lot.
And by observation, Director Casey says there were a mixture of Rossmore and Seal Beach residents who also have an interest in this same issue. But Ms. Deering placed a e-blast alert on our website and notifying people that if they had issues, if they were interested in their property values, that this might be something for them to be aware of and maybe participate in. And she informs me that this was the highest,
The highest open rate.
Good.
So that means that people were really interested in that email, and it went out to who it should go out to, and they opened it. About 70%. It was almost 70% open.
That's,
Oh, good, so you can monitor that. That's excellent.
oh, yeah. She knows actually who opened it.
I'm naive about those things.
70% is pretty impressive.
that's a good number.
Huge.
That's
yeah,
a good
it is.
number.
That's very pleasing to hear that.
Okay, gentlemen, I think you had your hand in the back up. This is not public forum time, but we'll allow you to come up for 3 minutes. How's that, since you weren't here earlier during public forum?
I object.
Dave Burgess, Rossmore resident. Just a general comment on the budget and the expenditures, where we stand on it. And I've been to a few meetings, and there's really, you don't hear a lot about, okay, well, last month we made progress on this project. This month we're considering or not considering this project. We don't need it down to the dollar. We're going to spend $20,000 on this. We're going to spend $50,000 on this. And just a general comment either by the city manager or the board, what's going on in the community from a financial standpoint on expenditures. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we have no closed sessions, and unless there's something else, Mr. Casey?
I have nothing further.
All right, motion to adjourn, please.
I make the motion that we adjourn.
Second?
All in favor, please say aye.
I
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, meeting adjourned.